The presses ran hot in 1984, churning out Lincoln cents by the billions. Nearly every American touched one that year, flipping them through change, losing them between cushions, lining the bottoms of purses and pockets. The coins were meant for one thing: to circulate, quietly and without question. But in that endless flow of copper-plated zinc, something unusual slipped through. Not broken. Not obvious. But different. A variation so subtle, so easily mistaken for damage or imperfection, that it went unnoticed for years. It wasn't loud. It was quiet. Too quiet. The error began on the obverse, the face of the coin, the portrait of Abraham Lincoln that had graced the cent since 1909. His profile had always been struck in precise detail, from the curve of his cheek to the sharply defined ear. But in this small group of 1984 cents, that detail faltered. It wasn't the wear of circulation or the damage of age. It was something else entirely. Lincoln's ear appeared doubled, as though he'd been given two overlapping ears, one just a breath off from the other. Not cartoonishly, but delicately, an extra fold of metal, shadowing the original. This doubling wasn't spread across the coin. The date, the motto, the word liberty, those elements were clear and untouched. The error existed only in the ear. It was surgical. Isolated. A mistake of precision. And that made it harder to detect, harder to classify, harder to explain. No one noticed it in 1984. Not the mint. Not the banks. Not the millions of Americans who passed the coins hand to hand. The year came and went. The Olympics drew the world's attention. Ronald Reagan stood for re-election. Pennies continued their journey, each identical in weight, color, and purpose. Yet within that ocean of sameness, a tiny number of coins were different, and waiting to be discovered. Years later, in Michigan, a hobbyist named Carla sat in her garage on a humid July afternoon, rolling coins into paper sleeves. She wasn't a professional collector. She didn't have high-powered magnifying tools or access to advanced reference guides. She just enjoyed the feeling of order, the quiet satisfaction of sorting, stacking, and occasionally stumbling onto wheat cents from decades past. She never expected anything of real value. That day, she paused mid-roll. A 1984 cent sat slightly off-color, its surface untouched by the usual corrosion. It gleamed red in the light, as though it had been spared time's usual toll. She lifted it closer. Something about Lincoln's ear looked off. Not broken. Not marred. Just off. She turned it, tilted it, squinted harder. There was a second shape beneath the curve of the ear. Like a faint echo pressed into the metal. Carla didn't have the words for it, but she had a gut feeling. She slipped it aside, placed it in a separate envelope, and jotted a note: check doubling. Days later, she drove to a local coin shop and handed it to a dealer named Vincent, who'd been studying cents for 30 years. He took one glance and froze. Then he reached beneath his counter for a loop. He didn't speak for a full minute. When he did, his voice was low, even. You might have something very rare here. He explained what she had found: a doubled die, not in the traditional sense, but one specific to Lincoln's ear. A misalignment of the die during the hubbing process had caused a secondary image to appear, creating the illusion of a second ear overlapping the original. It was delicate work. Many examples would have been discarded as damaged, mistaken for wear, or even overlooked completely by collectors unfamiliar with the anomaly. Vincent offered her $200 on the spot. She declined. Something in her told her the story wasn't over yet. She took the coin home and began to research. The doubling on Lincoln's ear was not widely known. A few message boards hinted at it. A couple of obscure publications mentioned it as a minor variety, rarely seen and never officially catalogued by the U.S. Mint. The error was there, but the recognition hadn't caught up. Then the community caught wind of it. Images of the doubled ear cent began circulating among collectors. People who had searched for the famous 1955 and 1972 double dies now turned their attention to this quieter, more refined error. Unlike those broader doubling patterns that spread across the date and motto, this was intimate. tucked inside the curve of Lincoln's ear. A whisper instead of a shout, certification companies began receiving submissions. Most coins were fakes or showed machine doubling, an entirely different and far less valuable form of distortion. But a few passed inspection. Each one confirmed the same characteristics: strong doubling on the ear only, clean date, no other markers. The die used had only created a limited batch before being retired or corrected. Carla's coin was among the first confirmed examples and was graded mint state 66 red. The market responded with quiet intensity. Early bids hit $1,500. Then $2,200. She waited, declining offers, watching the buzz grow. Within months, the coin was sold through a private broker for $6,400, well beyond her expectations. But the ripples had only just begun. Collectors across the country dove into their collections. Thousands of 1984 cents were pulled from folders, jars, and shoeboxes. Most yielded nothing. But a few bore the telltale ear. Auction listings multiplied. The excitement wasn't just in the rarity, it was in the specificity. This was a coin that required care to identify. It demanded attention. It rewarded patience. One collector found a near-perfect example in a roll purchased for face value from a bank in rural Kansas. His coin was graded MS-67 and sold at auction for just under $19,000. Another was discovered in Pennsylvania in a child's piggy bank and later fetched $27,000 after passing through 2 private hands. By the time major grading services added the variety to their official population reports, the 1984 doubled-ear Lincoln cent had cemented its place among the most sought-after modern mint errors. The prices continued their steady climb. A particularly pristine specimen, held in a private collection for nearly a decade, came to auction in 2023 and shattered previous records, selling for $42,000. That sale changed the perception entirely. This wasn't just a quirky die error. It was a key to a modern series. A must-have for serious Lincoln cent enthusiasts. And yet, the population remained stubbornly small. Only a few dozen high-grade examples had been confirmed. Most coins were circulated, worn, or damaged. Mint state red coins with strong ear doubling were scarce. And then came a dramatic turn. In 2024, a collector in Oregon submitted a specimen for regrading. It came back with a shocking designation, MS-68 red. The highest grade ever assigned to a known doubled-ear example. The coin was flawless, bright, untouched by circulation, with deeply struck features and unmistakable doubling. It was the apex of the variety. When it crossed the auction block, the bidding war was immediate and fierce. In under 7 minutes, the price jumped past $60,000. 2 phone bidders pushed it further. The final hammer came down at $110,000. The crowd was stunned. A 1984 cent, common, overlooked, passed from hand to hand, had become a 6-figure treasure. Collectors reeled. Dealers scoured inventory. The market realigned. The 1984 doubled-ear Lincoln cent had officially arrived as a heavyweight in modern era coins. No longer a hidden secret. No longer an amateur's curiosity. It had crossed the threshold into numismatic legend. Today, the coin remains elusive. Fewer than 50 confirmed examples exist across all grades. High-grade specimens command intense competition. And yet, for all its rarity, it still hides in plain sight. Somewhere, in a forgotten change jar, in an old desk drawer, or buried deep in a childhood collection, another example may lie undiscovered. Another echo pressed into copper. Another whisper of a mistake that became magic. And its value? That depends on the condition, the color, the strength of the doubling. But the current range sits between $42,000 and $110,000, proof that even the humblest coin, in the right moment, can become a legend. In the vast churn of copper and zinc, where machines hummed with precision and repetition, the year 1973 yielded over 3.8 billion Lincoln cents at the Philadelphia Mint alone. Most of them were born to a life of anonymity, destined to jingle in pockets, vanish beneath car seats, and pass through countless hands unnoticed. Yet, within this avalanche of routine production, something subtle and peculiar occurred. An anomaly, easily missed by the naked eye, had crept into the presses. At first, no one paid attention. Why would they? A penny is a penny. Until it isn't, the machines didn't stutter. The dies weren't broken. Nothing seemed dramatically out of place. But then, under certain lighting, a glint of doubling shimmered across the surface of one coin, barely perceptible, but undeniably present. Liberty looked a little bolder. The date, 1973, shimmered with an uncanny echo, as if it had been whispered twice on metal. This was not a manufacturing fluke that could be seen with ease. It wasn't loud. It was silent, hiding in plain sight, riding the tide of circulation unnoticed. Years passed. Dozens, in fact. Then, on a chilly November morning in Indiana, a collector named Eli wandered through a dusty flea market. His eyes were seasoned, his instincts sharp, but even he wasn't searching for anything revolutionary. He enjoyed the chase more than the prize, the quiet rhythm of sifting through piles of what others deemed worthless. That day, he paused at a wooden box of scattered coins priced by weight, not worth. Something about the sheen of one particular penny arrested his hand. He didn't know why at first. It was just a 1973 Lincoln cent worn, yes, but there was something off about the way the light refracted over the date. Eli took it home out of curiosity, dropped it onto his inspection tray, and forgot about it for 3 days. When he finally sat down to examine his finds, it was late evening. The television hummed in the background, muted. As the microscope lens slid into focus over the penny's obverse, Eli's breath caught. The word Liberty was doubled, distinctly. So was the date. The mint mark, missing, confirmed it was struck in Philadelphia, but the doubling wasn't subtle anymore under magnification. This wasn't machine damage. It wasn't post-mint manipulation. It was a genuine, honest-to-history doubled die. He cross-checked his coin catalogs. No mention. He reached for online databases. Still nothing. Forums yielded whispers, rumors of a minor 1973 double die, but nothing confirmed or catalogued officially. The penny sat defiant in his palm. If it was real, it was rare. If it was undocumented, it was potentially unique. Sleep became an afterthought. Eli spent nights emailing numismatic experts, submitting photographs, sending the coin off to grading services. Weeks passed. Then a letter arrived, official and brief. The coin had been authenticated. A Class 4 double die, struck by a rotated die that caused a pivoted doubling effect. It wasn't a dramatic doubling like the famous 1955 or 1969 yes versions, but it was undeniable, and it had passed through decades of commerce unnoticed. Eli's hands trembled. This was no longer just a penny. This was history, fossilized in copper. Word spread through the numismatic community like static electricity, quiet, then sudden, then everywhere. Forums buzzed. Collectors ransacked their penny hoards. Dealers dug into backstock. Everyone was looking for another. The known population remained minuscule. Some argued it was only one of 3 ever discovered. Others speculated there could be dozens still buried in jars, forgotten at the bottom of kitchen drawers or rolling around in old cash registers. Auction houses began circling. The coin made its debut quietly, sold in a private transaction for just over $2,100. Modest, some said. But others saw it as the beginning. Eli tracked its journey after it left his possession. It surfaced again 2 years later, fetching nearly double the previous amount. Then again, during a spike in copper coin collecting interest, it leapt to $8,000. By the time it appeared on a major auction site, speculation alone drove its value skyward. But then, something unusual happened. A collector in Arizona named Dana claimed to have found a second coin. It matched Eli's discovery in every detail: same doubling, same die markers, same rotational anomaly. But hers had one crucial difference: the reverse was slightly misaligned. Just enough to indicate that the reverse die may have been loose at the moment of strike. A minting anomaly stacked atop a minting error. When graded, her coin received a mint state 65 red designation, pushing its prestige into uncharted territory. Rumors circulated that the mint may have experimented with a batch of dies briefly in 1973. Some speculated this wasn't accidental at all. Could the doubling have been a deliberate test, a remnant of a die trial meant to remain internal? Theories bloomed. A former mint employee, decades retired, wrote anonymously to a coin publication, hinting at an unreported die reworking process tested briefly at Philadelphia in early 1973. If true, it meant that the double dies weren't just mechanical failures, they were secret survivors of a closed-door process. That whisper alone inflated the coin's mystique. Suddenly, this wasn't just about doubling. It was about a cover-up. A forgotten chapter. Perhaps even a minor scandal in minting history. Prices responded like dry kindling to flame. Dana's coin sold for $14,500 at auction, triggering a wave of reassessments in the coin market. Every 1973 cent now drew closer scrutiny. Collectors began to regard even faint doubling with hopeful eyes, hoping for that perfect match. And then came the twist that no one expected. A third coin surfaced in New England. It was corroded, green with verdigris, and had been unearthed by a metal detectorist near an old riverbed. It was nearly dismissed as junk. But under the grime, the same doubling persisted. The same pivot. The same telltale notch in the 3 of the date. But it also bore something else, a die crack running from Lincoln's shoulder to the rim. A new marker. A later strike from the same faulty die, breaking down with each coin it struck. This coin was the final breath of the die's life. Numismatists were stunned. This meant a sequence could be traced. Eli's coin had clean, sharp doubling, an early strike. Dana's showed slight misalignment, mid-stage. The riverbed coin showed die deterioration, end stage. A full die progression. It told a story not just of rarity, but of time, wear, and collapse. A narrative etched into 3 cents across 3 decades and 3 states. By now, the community no longer saw the 1973 double die as a minor footnote. It became a saga. A whispered hunt. Collectors speculated about a fourth coin, a fifth, perhaps a complete roll that somehow survived untouched. Auctioneers began to reference the coins not by grade, but by their place in the chronology: early state Eli, mid-state Dana, and late-state riverbed. Together, they formed a trio of unmatched storytelling power in copper form. Coin shows displayed replicas behind glass cases, tracing the changes with magnified overlays. Articles, podcasts, and videos poured forth. Yet none could quite explain how such a meaningful error evaded detection for so long. Perhaps it was the sheer volume of 1973 cents produced. Perhaps it was luck. Or perhaps, as some speculated, it was something more intentional, tucked away by someone inside the mint who never thought their secret would resurface. The coins became more than collectibles. They were mysteries. Fragments of a broken machine, whispering of a single moment when process faltered and error escaped undetected. And each time one surfaced, the marketplace held its breath. Would it match the die characteristics? Would it belong to the same flawed parent? Or had another, separate doubling occurred, hinting at a second rogue die no one yet knew about? The questions only added to the suspense, driving values higher. As of now, privately confirmed offers for Eli's coin have reached north of $21,000. Dana's is rumored to be insured for more than $30,000. The riverbed coin, though damaged, holds immense historical weight and last sold for nearly $12,000 to a museum collector who believes it may represent the final known breath of the mysterious 1973 die. And so the story continues, quietly. In pockets, in drawers, in forgotten jars, there may yet linger a fourth voice to join the trio. Another whisper in copper. Another clue waiting to be found. Each 1973 penny is now a question. Each one demands a second glance. Because somewhere in the ordinary, the extraordinary still waits to be uncovered. In 2005, the world had already grown used to change. Technology surged forward. Communication shrank to the size of a screen. But in the hands of Americans, the Lincoln cent remained one of the few constants. It hadn't changed its core appearance in decades. Abraham Lincoln still stared solemnly ahead, the memorial still stood tall on the reverse. Billions of these small copper-plated zinc coins were minted that year. Routine. Predictable. Until something broke the pattern. It wasn't a dramatic break. No missing design, no blatant misprint. It was something much harder to see. A coin that, to most eyes, looked no different than the rest. But for a few collectors, those who inspected every detail, who knew the feel of a flawless strike and the depth of a proper die, the difference was unmistakable. And once seen, it could never be unseen. The 2005 Lincoln cent had a secret. A rare flaw. One that didn't announce itself, but quietly shifted the balance of perception and value. It began where most people never looked, at the subtle lines of Lincoln's features, specifically the tip of his jaw, the outline of his lips, and the smooth curve of his cheek. And it was there that something strange appeared, not distortion from wear, not damage from handling, but a doubling. A duplication of design elements, slightly shifted from the originals. This was not machine doubling, that common and valueless variety that plagues billions of coins. This was hub doubling, a true double die, formed not at the point of striking, but during the creation of the die itself. A second, misaligned impression during die production had caused certain parts of Lincoln's face to appear duplicated, almost like a soft echo in metal. The mint never confirmed how many were produced. Likely only one or two working dies carried the flaw. That meant perhaps thousands, maybe just hundreds, of these error coins ever entered circulation before the die was retired. They vanished into the massive ocean of pennies, indistinguishable to the average spender, waiting to be noticed. For a long time, they weren't. Years passed. Coin roll hunters searched for 1955 and 1972 double dies. Collectors praised the satin finish sets of the early 2000s. The 2005 double die quietly eluded attention. Most dealers had never seen one. Some didn't believe it existed at all. But in northern Arizona, an aging numismatist named Howard had begun to notice something odd in one of his rolls. Howard was known for his patience. He didn't rush through his coins. He studied them under bright light, compared them to reference photos, and took notes in longhand. He had acquired a full box of 2005 cents from a bank in Phoenix, unopened and untouched for years. They were fresh. Crisp. The kind of rolls most collectors only dream of, and in one of those rolls, halfway through a sleeve, Howard paused. He angled the coin. Lincoln's chin didn't look right. There was an extra line. Faint, yes, but present. The upper lip looked doubled, almost as if a ghost version of Lincoln's face hovered just beneath the real one. He'd seen machine doubling before. This wasn't it. The separation was clean. Intentional looking. He turned to his microscope. The evidence was clear. Strong doubling on Lincoln's chin and lower jaw, with a noticeable separation between the two images. No signs of damage. No roller marks. Just a true double die. Howard's hands trembled slightly as he placed the coin in a flip and wrote on the label, 2005 DDO. The next day, he contacted a grading service. The coin was submitted, evaluated, and after several weeks, returned with the designation he'd hoped for, 2005 1C double die obverse. It was real. Confirmed. And now, the chase was on. Collectors who had long ignored the 2005 cent began to look again. Hundreds of rolls were reopened. Microscope sales surged. Forums buzzed with theories and grainy photos. For every 100 claimed examples, only one or two held up under scrutiny. The real double die was elusive, known by its sharp doubling in specific regions, the lips, jaw, and lower cheek. Sometimes, if the light was right, the doubling seemed to make Lincoln's face shimmer, like it had been carved twice into the coin. The prices started small. Early confirmed examples fetched $200, then $400. As the community's awareness grew, so did demand. In early 2016, an uncirculated specimen in brilliant red condition sold for $2,800 through a private collector network. It wasn't just the error, it was the grade. Coins in near-perfect condition were nearly impossible to find. Then came a shock to the market. A teenager in Ohio, sorting through inherited coin jars, stumbled across what he thought was a normal 2005 cent. It had barely any wear, still red with its original mint luster. Something about it looked odd. He posted a photo online, where it quickly drew the attention of advanced collectors. One message came with urgency: get that coin graded immediately. The boy did just that. Weeks later, the result stunned even the professionals. The coin had been certified as a genuine 2005 double-die obverse, in MS68 red, a condition so pristine that it was instantly labeled a Population 1 by the grading company. It was the finest known example at the time. The coin went to auction, accompanied by growing buzz. Collectors recognized it as the benchmark for the variety. Bidding began conservatively but soon escalated into a battle between two anonymous online bidders and a floor agent. The coin crossed $50,000 within minutes. The room fell quiet as it passed $100,000. When the gavel finally dropped, the winning bid stunned even seasoned dealers. $150,000. That single sale changed the future of the 2005 double die forever. From a nearly unknown variety, it became a legend. Articles were written. Collecting guides were updated. What had once seemed like a niche modern error had transformed into a modern classic. The supply remained desperately low. Only a small number of coins had been certified. Most examples showed signs of wear. MS66 and higher examples were rare. MS67s were trophy pieces. And MS68s. Practically myth. Howard, the first man to find one, had never sold his. He kept it in a safety deposit box, wrapped in archival material, and said he only looked at it a few times a year. For him, it wasn't just a coin. It was a reminder that something extraordinary could still hide in the most ordinary of places. That a small flaw, carefully preserved, could change the way people viewed an entire mintage. As the years passed, the 2005 double-die obverse Lincoln cent solidified its reputation. It remained one of the most valuable and hardest to find modern cent errors. Collectors continued to chase it, not just for its market value, but for the thrill of discovery. For the belief that maybe, just maybe, one could still find a fortune in a handful of change. And the value? For coins with even modest doubling, in low grades, prices start in the hundreds. High-grade uncirculated pieces routinely sell for several thousand. But for those select few in elite condition, bright red, untouched by circulation, with bold, unmistakable doubling, the value now ranges from $26,000 to $150,000. A staggering figure for a coin that began its life like any other, unnoticed, uncelebrated, and full of hidden potential.